GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Coming to you live from the Gear Network studios in Rochester, New York. This is the JC Money Show with your host, John Cimino, aka JC Money. And now, here's John.
And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on the JC Money Show here on the Gear Radio Network. How in the hell are all of you? My name is John Cimino at I am JC Money on Twitter and on Instagram. TJCMS Podcast on Instagram as well. You can follow me there on any one of those platforms. And as always, supporting us, this podcast, this network, by just listening to the commercials start to finish without pausing or interrupting or anything like that. Just let them play through. You can mute the sound if you have to, but that helps us out greatly, as well as any of the other additional links that are on GearNetwork.com under the Support the Shows tab. You can support us there. On today's show, a small commentary just on some things, some reflections on the year that was 2020, the year that is 2021, and I don't know. It's hard to really write things down when so many things have gone on in such a short period of time. There's just a lot, man. There's just a lot that has been going on in the world, and I've offered commentaries about it in the past, and I've tweeted about it in the past, and I've put things on Facebook in the past about what's going on in politics, the behavior of the people that are in support of the current administration that, as of recording, has 9 days remaining in its tenure. I've been saying from the very beginning that Donald Trump is not the best person for the job. He's grossly unqualified. Some of the things that he is saying is inciting riots, or it is giving the wrong impression, and sympathizers very much in line with how, if you paid attention in history class or you paid attention to whatever when you were growing up in school, you would know that those that followed other dictators in their dictator regimes were sympathizers at first and made excuses for them. I had to deal with that with my family. A large number of members of my family, for reasons I cannot fully comprehend. And some of them listen to this podcast, so I'm sure they're going to know that not any more than they already know that I disagree with them fundamentally on that, but it always baffled me that a member of my family, particularly on the Spanish side of my family, would fall in line with these ideologies that do not benefit them at all. Like, at all. There have been a number of inferences made towards Hispanics, particularly Mexicans, that kept me away from the guy, but I was always away from the guy. I didn't like the guy going back to the 80s and when he was, palling around with Vince McMahon at WrestleMania. WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5 were at the Trump Plaza, the Atlantic City Convention Center, and he was given TV time on there, and he didn't know what he was talking about in terms of wrestling. He just knew he liked what he was seeing, and they liked that he was there, and everybody was spending money, and that was that. WrestleMania 7, he made an appearance in the crowd, and pretty much the same thing. Oh, hope to have one in Trump Plaza soon again. This is a fantastic, whatever. And then again into WrestleMania 24 with the thing, but even as a celebrity, even as a civilian, I was just not a fan of the guy. I never was. Anybody that's known me knows I never liked the guy. I never liked Trump. I thought he was a douche. Certainly didn't think that he was going to be president. I know he toyed around with the idea a few times and kept hinting and talking about it back in the 80s and the 90s and an experimental run in 2000. that didn't go anywhere, mercifully. Though if it went somewhere, we would have known by 2004 that this guy was a complete fucking creep, and we wouldn't have had this now. But we ended up getting it in 2016. And for the last 4 years, rather than work on the things that unify America and unify people, division has been created. And for me, I'm trying my best to understand, and really what it boils down to is that there are people that find it a lot easier to just shrug their shoulders and go along with whatever makes sense to them to maintain their own personal sanity. Logic be damned. Feelings be damned, unless it was their own that were being hurt. Then that was the worst thing of all, but God forbid somebody says something about Mexicans being rapists or Muslims not being allowed to come into the country purely because they are Muslims. Or even systematic oppression and racism with black people, people of color, people that are my color, that are a different shade of brown, a lighter shade of brown. Which then feeds the point of my side of the family that fits that description. Many different shades of brown members of my family are, and they're on the Trump train, and the only reason that I could assume that anybody that is the antithesis of the message that Trump was saying from the beginning supports him is because they simply do not know or do not understand why they support him. And it's easier to just go along with the guy that makes them laugh or says ridiculous shit because, he's just saying that because of blah, blah, blah. That's the thing. That was the key. Everybody had hung their hats on, he's not really going to do anything. He's not really going to say anything. He doesn't endorse the Proud Boys. He didn't mean that there were nice people on both sides of the fence in Charlottesville or anything like that. Like, you had these sympathizers, people that are otherwise normal, decent people. And then it starts getting real weird. You start getting these people that feel that Donald Trump, of all people, was sent to Earth by God to help reclaim the country or to help bring people together. But it's only a certain demographic of people. So that begs the question, what God are you talking about? What God do you worship? Now, I'm not going down the whole religion road because I don't do religion anymore. I grew up having to go to church every Sunday and having to pretend to be the holier than thou person, just like the rest of my family did, holier than thou between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Sundays. And then after that, go back to being the fucking douchebag that we all are. You know, I don't do religion. Besides the hypocrisy involved in it, it's to me does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's subjective to whomever. It's basically, if you were to take a verse or something out of the Bible, right? And you pose it to 3 different people, 3 different Christians or Catholics especially, you will get 3 different interpretations on what they think is meant in that book. Then you'll have the others that take what's written in that book, the Bible, and believe it verbatim. That things listed in that book actually happened. You combine those 2 demographics of people, topped with the uneducated that either didn't make it through high school, didn't make it through college, or just they're followers that want to be leaders, so to speak. I guess. I don't know. This whole thing has been perplexing. Because when I think of a Trump supporter, I think of the old time. I think of the NASCAR fans that abandoned NASCAR when NASCAR said, we don't deal with the whole racism thing and we don't want the Confederate flags flown at our events. That's what I think of when I say Trump supporter. Those are the people I think of. I think of ex-NASCAR fans. I don't or didn't think that anybody that I considered a friend or anybody that I grew up with or anybody that is a member of my family would legitimately subscribe to the theories and the ideological theories that Donald Trump has brought to the forefront. Whatever you feel about this whole situation or not, what happened last week at the Capitol was absolutely an internal terrorist act. And I was that guy that said on Twitter and on Facebook, as public as I could be, because I can't not say things like this, but if that were a BLM protest, they wouldn't have gotten that far. It would not have gotten that far at all. It's also been pointed out that Donald Trump did not tell the National Guard to go to the Capitol to help, despite numerous requests from Capitol Police asking for help. That it was Vice President Mike Pence, whom was one of the targets from this Trump mob. But what really hammers this down, not only does it hammer down the just absurdity of what happened, but the absurdity of the sympathizers and the battles that I've had to fight and the relationships that I've lost over the last 4 years, was when some jackwagon climbed a flagpole in the Capitol and replaced it with a Confederate flag and a Trump flag. And Donald Trump has said nothing. Nothing about that. On the day of, he told everybody to go home. We love you. We feel your pain. The people that were storming the Capitol, he loves them and was feeling their pain. Then he comes out not too long after that, once all the rumblings started happening, once the confirmation of Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States was made. Then he comes out with a terribly read from a teleprompter response condemning everything. Only then to turn around and say, hey, I wish I didn't commit to a peaceful transfer of power. You know, like every president before him has done. I don't understand it. I really don't. I have largely avoided talking about politics, talking, quote unquote, anti-Trump, if you will, because a lot of the Trump branded, you know, the Trump followers, for as much as they, and as quick as they are to call one a snowflake when they interpret that feelings are hurt, they're the very quickest to prove that very point, to prove that they are exactly as they describe. And they tend to get a little like that whole silent majority thing. There's never been a damn silent majority of Trump supporters. They're not a single one of them has shut their mouth in 4 years. But for my own sanity, I found that I've had to really scale down my communications with people that I otherwise would be very communicative with because of this. When you combine what has happened with the Trump administration over the last 4 years with the way the world is changing, the way the world is changing, the pandemic, everything that's going on right now, 2020, the year should not have surprised anybody. We could not have had a worse year. just overall as humans, but at the top of the food chain in the United States, we couldn't have had. It was as bad. I would imagine it. As a citizen of America, it must be like being a football player on the New York Jets, where there's terrible ownership, terrible coaching, year in and year out. And they recycle coaches every couple of years. Well, this was a terrible coaching hire by America. To break it into sports terminology for you, America was looking to fill a head coaching vacancy when their last head coach was due to retire. And the coaching search went on, and unfortunately boiled down to two grossly unqualified candidates. Well, actually, it wasn't even two grossly unqualified. One grossly unqualified candidate, one terribly unpopular candidate. The only reason Trump won was because he wasn't Hillary Clinton. That's it. If Hillary Clinton was not running and it was somebody else, Joe Biden even, back then, there's no way Trump wins that election. There's no way. But it was those Trump people who maybe at that point in time were the silent majority, were beating their chest about Benghazi and tied that to Hillary Clinton. And some random weird pizza rig sex scheme with children involved underneath that. I don't know. But the conspiracy theorists lobbied around Trump. That became their guy. Trump realized this is the attention I'm getting, and it's always going to be loud, and I'm always going to be out in the forefront, so I'm just going to cater to these guys. And then those conspiracy theorists, when they're proven wrong, which is very, 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 very frequently, they get mad, and they cry, and they whine, and they become the very snowflakes that they themselves, by that terminology's definition, created. As an American, you should be disgusted, regardless of whether you are a registered Democrat or Republican or whatever. You should be disgusted at what happened at the Capitol. And as a Democrat or Republican, not saying this is somebody that was anti-Trump, but the fact of the matter is, Trump was the one that was leading the march. Trump was the one that incited all of this. Trump was the one that instigated all of this. He has to take responsibility for something in his life. He has never done that, and he feeds off of the lesser intelligent community to just buy the bullshit he sells, and it worked. That's the thing. It worked. And it's hard to treat people like you as intellects when you're being hoodwinked by the oldest tricks in the book. Everything that happened, you've been warned about. Everybody was warned about Trump and what might happen. Trump himself warned you. If the election doesn't go my way, it was because it was rigged. But if I win, then it was okay. So I don't understand how anybody with a higher IQ, with an IQ higher than 10, can support this guy and continue to try to justify, unless you're just dirty South white, like white, like what the definition of white privilege is. If you're that makes sense to me. If you are not that, I don't understand how you could do it. And I don't want to understand because, quite frankly, I don't want to speak to anybody that does. I'm going to fire a quick commercial break. When I come back, I'm going to throw on some closing thoughts on, well, quite frankly, I know I said I wasn't going to give this guy the time of day, but just the stories that have come out about Brody Lee's death, and why people like Disco Inferno or Bruce Mitchell from The Torch seem to believe that they have any sort of right to know. Again, conspiracy theory. Imagine that. The common denominator between the commentary earlier on and where I'm about to go is their mindset, is their ideologies. We'll talk about that and more when I come back on the Jason Money Show. Stick around.
Step inside, but you don't see too many faces. Coming in out of the rain, let's go down.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the JC Money Show. And hey, I want to talk about a brand new sponsor we have to the program, brand new partner to the Gear Network family, repsports.com. That's right, Gear is now a proud affiliate of repsports.com. Repsports.com, proud makers of Rep Sports Whey Plus Protein, Raise Energy drink, among so many other things. Hey, click the link that is in the episode description in this bio right now. Take a look at their products if they have, and if you enter the promo code GEAR, that's GERE, at checkout, you'll receive an additional 15% off of your purchases. I drink Raise Energy as well, so this is a wonderful addition. I can attest that it works. It is as advertised. Again, click on the link in the episode description. There will be links and banners and all sorts of things coming on Gear Network within the next week, promoting Raise heavily. And but if you go ahead and in the episode link here, episode description, click the link, get you some energy, type in the code GEAR, save you 15% on your order, and I thank you. All right, closing it off here with this commentary, and again, the whole thing, the first segment of it was really just me venting frustration. There's a lot of you I know that watch that either watch the video casts or watch me wrestle in the past, follow my blogs, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, listen to my podcast, that I think I know there's a good chunk of you that are having a little bit of a battle within yourself. And it's okay. It's okay to be conflicted, because for 4 years, you were under the belief that this person and this administration was something that they were not. And last week, you realized that very point. And now you're kind of like, crap. What do I do? Just be yourself. That's all you need to do, is just be yourself. And stop trying to push, any sort of justification or anything like that. Just accept the loss. Accept that you were wrong. It is human nature to be wrong at times. God knows I've been wrong a million times. But just move on. Let that shit go. You know why? Because life is short. As the Brody Lee death has really hammered home for me. And I broke down on Trust the Podcast and told the Brody Lee story. And, I'm going to kind of let it be what it is. I'm at the acceptance point of the grief stage now. But what I don't accept are conspiracy theorists. Again, there we go again with that demographic. That stupid fucking demographic. Conspiracy theorists like Disco Inferno, or former PW Torch, 30, who wrote for 30 years there, good guy, Bruce Mitchell, talking about how Brody Lee's death is being kept from them. How Brody Lee's death is being kept from everybody. Well, the reasons for it, we need to know the real reasons for it. Never mind that his wife and his kids, whom are grieving, like grieving hardcore, are now tasked with the unfortunate expectation of moving forward without the patriarch of their family there. And she puts out a statement that says, non-COVID related lung issue. That's all that was needed. I know the Huber family. I take them, I can take them at face value, and I can tell you that when they say, this is what it is, this is what it is. There's nothing more to it. So Disco Inferno and Bruce Mitchell, whatever the hell your stupid name is. Now I can't even remember your name, because I'm starting to get a little upset thinking about this now. Thinking that this has to be said. But who the hell do the two of you, mainly you, Disco, who the hell do you think you are? Who do you think you are to deserve any sort of explanation involving a person's death or involving a family's right to privacy? Who are you over anybody else that lived within 10 minutes of the guy and knew him for 20 years? 20 plus years, even longer for some of his even longtime friends, like the former RCW guys like Czar and Schultz and the Delaney's. They knew him a whole hell of a lot longer than I knew him. And I've known Brody for 20 years. But these are details that even they don't have and didn't ask for and didn't care to get because Mrs. Brody Lee, Amanda, flat out said, non-COVID related lung issue. Period. Point blank. It wasn't COVID. Doesn't always have to be COVID or anything else. And it doesn't always have to be something brought out to the limelight just because a person is a celebrity. And Brody Lee, John Huber, very much was a celebrity. He had celebrity status. He had that celebrity clout. Even though he didn't act like it, which was awesome of him. But just because he's on TV every week, just because you know who he is, just because you could buy merchandise for him at ProWrestlingTees.com/Brody Lee, where all proceeds go to the Huber family, just because you could do that does not mean that his family owes you, of all people, Disco Inferno, or anybody for that matter, a full, detailed, goddamn explanation for why her husband lost his life. I'm glad to see that it's finally died down now, at least that I've seen, because I've hidden as many things, as many posts about this as I could hide personally for my own sanity. But Disco Inferno, flat out, fuck you. And Bruce Mitchell, fuck you too. A man died. 2 young boys lost their dad. A wife lost her first love. And you're over here asking questions, asking, well, what about blah, blah, blah? What about blah, blah, blah? Fuck you. How about that? They don't owe you anything. They don't owe me anything. They don't owe the listeners anything. They don't owe anybody anything but themselves. Celebrities are people too. Pro wrestlers are people too. When the camera goes off, they're normal, just like you and me. They have a right to their privacy, and they do not, absolutely do not, owe you, Glenn Gilberti, or Bruce Mitchell, anything. Anything. At all. That's going to do it for this edition of the JC Money Show here on the Gear Radio Network. I appreciate you sticking around. Again, in the episode description, Raise Energy. Go ahead, click that link on there. Take a look at their products and enter the code GEAR at checkout for 15% off of the products that they have there. As well, listen to the commercials following this podcast, following the conclusion, and just listen to those as well. That helps out greatly. Thanks again for tuning into the commentary this week. I'll be back again with another very, very soon. So long, everybody. Good night now. Flava Flav, give me a yeah, boy, for Brody Lee. Yeah, boy! Hang on, one more thing before you go. Remember, listen to our sponsors following this podcast, as that does help this podcast and this network out in a way that we appreciate very, very much. So if you could just ride it out 30 to 60 more seconds after this podcast is over, listen to those commercials. It would be doing us a very, very big solid. And again, we thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. For more, log on to GearNetwork.com.